Hi guys, and welcome back to True Confessions of a PK. I'm your host Karina.
I'm Karla.
And this is Confession 9. I have questions. Answers. I have questioned God's plans for me.
Yeah, so essentially with this confession, we wanted to discuss it because I feel like every pastor's kid at one point questions the plans that God has for their lives. Mm-hmm. And not just pastor kids. Like we mentioned previously in different episodes, like this could be applied to the general public too.
Yeah.
Especially when you have a relationship with God, there are moments in your life where you're going to question whether what you're living or going through is really like God's purpose in your life, you know? And all that. So basically, Karina, has there ever been a moment in your life where you have questioned God's plan?
Yes. I think it starts with, you know, when people give you like word at church and they're like, you're going to do this.
Probably get closer to your mic. I'm sorry.
Why? Okay. Anyway.
So, Karina, have you ever questioned God's plan in your life?
Yes. I think it starts with when people give you word at church or like you're praying and they come up to you and they're like, oh, I saw this, or God says that you're going to be doing this, you know. A lot of the times I feel like I questioned because I had plans of my own where I didn't really think like, God, is this what you want for me? You know? Is this like the future that you have for me? I just thought this is what I want to do. Not because like I felt good about it or anything. It just looked good. Like picturing that looked good, and so I wanted to do that. And because God's plan was not that, I doubted. Mm-hmm. And I was like, God, is this really what you want for me? Which, you know, he does. He wants his plan for you, right? But everybody has free will.
Yeah.
So you, in a way, get to choose what you're going to do. Why are you laughing?
Oh, because of Koa.
Oh.
If you hear background noise, it's our dog.
Yeah. But
no,
yeah.
I understand. It kind of like reminds me of the story of the Israelites. And when God took them out of Egypt. And they were so pumped up for God's plan because they could see like God's miracles and wonders, you know, happening before them. And once they crossed the Red Sea, it was like God didn't leave them alone. Like they weren't by themselves, but they became very desperate for what they wanted, for what the plans that they were having, like planning, that when it didn't align with what God wanted, they started relying on different sources. Like they started relying on different gods. They started relying on different methods to get what they wanted, you know? And in a sense, they turned their backs on God. But at the same time, every time they would become desperate again because the different gods wouldn't provide them what they wanted either. I mean, at one point they were worshiping a cow statue, so that's how desperate they got, right? But because they didn't get it from them or from those gods either, they went back to God. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And it was like this back and forth relationship, and that's like such a good example, because if you don't know the story, you can find it in the book of God called the Bible.
Oh, I thought you were like talking about the chapter. I was like, "There's
you
not."
You can find it in the Bible.
It's not called that.
Or you can just watch. If you're not really a Bible person, you can just watch The Prince of Egypt.
But that doesn't show you after.
No, it doesn't.
I think VeggieTales talks about it.
Really? I'm pretty sure they do.
They have an episode where they talk about Joshua.
Oh, yeah.
Who came after Moses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, but that's essentially like a possible relationship that you could have with God. You can have like this back and forth relationship with him. And it's not healthy. But if you are one of those people, then I don't know how much it takes for you to open up your eyes and realize that, you know, just pushing your will, there's going to be consequences to it. You know what I mean? Like, in my case, you know, when you're raised in a Christian household, you see all these, well, we went to a public school. We weren't homeschooled, just saying. But I would see, like, my friends live a different life than what I would live, you know? And not just saying, we're not just, like, I wasn't just saying it because of church. I would say, like, in their way that they were being raised, in the way that, you know, they were allowed to go to parties, they were allowed to experience life, quotation marks, and I wasn't able to do that, you know? And so sometimes I would question, like, well, you know, should I experience that? You know, should I be able to experience that too? How come they're living a perfectly good life, living in, I guess, what you would consider like a sinful life, compared to me, who I'm raised as in a Christian household. I have a relationship with God, but I felt like I was struggling more than they were. You know what I mean? And so I would question God's plan for my life. And I would say, like, hey, God, like, I actually have a relationship with you and those people don't. So how come they have a better life than I do? You know?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that that's always the case, but in my case, like, I would see that and I would compare it.
It's also like the timing of things. Like, in a moment, you're going to feel like, God, I want this in my life, right? In that moment. And, like, well, this happened with me, right? Where I would continue my relationship with God. I would be like, God, like, I really need this in my life. You know, I really want to be able to do this. And I wouldn't see it happening, right? But then I would look at other people who I knew were not living the way I was living. And I felt like, why do they get to have it, but I don't?
Yeah.
You know? And so it's like, why are you rewarding them when they're not living life according to how you want us to, you know? But instead they're living in a quote unquote sinful way, right? And it's like, and I'm not, but quote unquote, right? Because we all sin at one point. We all sin. And so, like, I would see it like that. But at the same time, it's like, okay, maybe it's not the time for you to have that in your life. And that's what I had to learn. Like, it wasn't time for me to have that in my life. I needed to wait. And I needed to wait because in the waiting, I was learning more. I was becoming prepared for what I wanted. You know, I wasn't ready yet. If I would have had it in that moment, like, I wouldn't have known what to do with it. I would have just been like, right? But God gave it to me when he saw that I was ready for it. And I'm grateful for that because I knew what to do.
Yeah. And I feel like God knows you the most, like, because they honk. Anyways, because in my case, one of the areas where I would struggle more when it came to God's plan was, like, I've always been the type of person that I plan ahead. Like, I plan my life ahead. So I would always say, like, okay, I'm going to graduate high school. I'm going to go to college. And then in college, like, I can start dating because by the time that I'm 24 years old, my plan was that I was going to be married. You know, that was my plan. And as I got closer to that age, I felt like desperation. Like, I was like, oh my God, I don't have a boyfriend. Like, how am I going to get married this year when I don't even have a boyfriend, you know? But it was, and I would also get, like, every time it would come to a relationship, I would always question God's plan for me. Mm-hmm. Because it's something that I'm not going to say I'm desperate for, but I yearn for. I yearn for a partner mm-hmm. that I can spend my life with. I yearn for that, like, that person that I can spend time with, that will love me and that I can love them, you know, like, and I also yearn for those moments that are like, I don't know, like, I guess those cheesy moments where you buy each other Valentine's gifts. Like, that's how I am. Like, I guess more romantic in that sense. But I've always wanted a relationship like that. Like, I've always wanted mm-hmm. something in that sense. And I remember when I was younger, it was more of a struggle because I would see all my friends, like, at one point, all my friends started getting married. They started having kids. And I was here, like, single as can be, you know? And I would be like, God, like, why haven't you put this person in my path? You know, like, I have been serving you. I've been doing all these good things, you know, like, why haven't I been rewarded with what I want most than anything in my life, you know? Mm-hmm. And I'm not even that picky about it. Like, that's how I would say it, like, in my conversations with him. And I remember one time I got a word, and the word was like, we were in line to receive, like, prayer. And the person that was praying over everybody was taking a long time with the people ahead of me. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to sit down and that's it.
You were impatient.
I was impatient because I was like, this guy's taking too long. I'm praying for all these people. Like, I'm just going to sit. And I remember I sat down and I was like, I'm just going to close my eyes for a bit here. You know, like, if God wants to speak to me, he can speak to me from here, you know? And the person, like, there was an order, like, the person was praying for people, and all of a sudden I feel like a tap on my shoulder, and I look up and it's the person, and the person was like, I have a word for you, and I was gonna give it to you. I wasn't gonna give it to you, but God spoke to me right now. He wasn't gonna give it to me because he was going in an order, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so he said, just like you got so impatient with waiting to receive something, like, just be aware not to do that when it comes to your relationships, your future relationship with someone. And I remember feeling like, that's very cheesy, right? And at the same time, I was like, okay, God. And so in the future,
got me.
Yeah. So after that, I was like, I wasn't that big on it, you mm-hmm. know? And then it got to a point where I thought I had met who God had for me. And as soon as I felt like that, I got, like, impatient, I guess is what the word is. And I was like, how do I express this to that person? How do I let them know that I like them, you know? Mm-hmm. How do I express it to this person so that I can get married at 24, you know? But not just because of that, but also because I was like, I really do feel like this person is from God, you know? Mm-hmm. They are a person that I felt like we could grow and teach each other, and we were at, like, the same level when it came to, like, the same spiritual level is what I felt like, you know? And I would receive words that I would feel like, oh, this has to do with that, you know? But I remember one time I was praying because I was like, God, you know, I don't think this person took the hint of how I felt, you know? And so I was praying, and God reminded me of that word, the one I mentioned way before.
Impatient one.
The impatient one. And I remember feeling like, why couldn't you have reminded me of this word before
I started feeling this way.
Yeah. But then I realized, like, I was pushing my own plans, you know, and I was questioning God about it. Like, I was like, how is this part of your plans for my life, you know? But I was the one that was insisting on the plans that I thought were coming from God. And the reality is that I think of it and I'm like, was I really at that time ready for a relationship? Was like, yeah, my heart felt like it was ready, but was I mentally prepared for it? Was I spiritually prepared for it? Like, that's why the Bible always says, like, be careful with your heart, because, like, it can deceive you, you know, from the stuff that you want and God's plans, you know? And so I felt like that was one of the moments recently that I have had where I questioned God's plans for my life, because I became impatient with it and I really wanted it. And I guess I felt like I guess now that I see it, I was really pushing and insisting on it. And I think I wouldn't have been ready for it, you know? I'm ready for it now. I'm just kidding. Go, Karina.
I feel like with me, it's because, like, you know how they would always be like, okay, if you want to receive prayer or, like, word, like, go to the front, right? And then you go and you stand there and you're, like, waiting. And they come and they pray for you. And they're like, do you have something specific you want to be prayed for? And it's like, yeah, sure, this, that. Or it's like, no, not really. I never really received word. And it was so frustrating because I was like, God, like, I want you to speak to me. Like, I want you to use someone to speak to me because I just want you to clarify. Like, what do you want from me, right? Because we went through this thing at church where not the youth group, but the group that...
The
intermediate group is what we were called. They were the ones... Well, because I was a part of them, were the ones that God started using as his instruments, you know, in church. And it was a very beautiful experience. It really was. And it still is, because he still uses us. Or me. Yeah. And there were...
Politely saying, I don't know about that.
Well, I don't know about that. But yeah, like, that was a beautiful
Salvation
experience.
is personal, guys.
It is. And so, like, I knew what it was like for God to use you as an instrument to speak to other people. And I saw how, like, the words that God would give me and that I would say to them would impact their lives. Like, I saw it firsthand, right? How they were like, oh, wow, like, I really needed to hear this. Or how sometimes he gave them, like, clear instructions, you know? And I was like, I need clear instruction, God, you know? Like, I'm hearing your voice, but I'm not hearing your voice for me, like, when it comes to me. That's what I felt like. And so I was like, am I even supposed to be doing this? Like, are you actually supposed to be, like, using me as an instrument when I'm not receiving? Like, I'm not hearing your voice for myself, you know? That's what I started feeling. So that's when I started questioning, like, what am I doing? You know? Am I actually, like, building my relationship with God? Like, what is going on? And I started wanting to hear his voice, like, from someone else. And I wouldn't get that. Like, nobody had a word to give me. And so I was like, great, you know? I would just come back, not disappointed, because obviously I would receive, but I would just come back, like, the same. And so it got to the point where I was just like, you know what? I'm not gonna push it. I'm not gonna be like, God, speak to me, you know? Because for all I know, he's actually speaking to me and I'm just not listening to him. Like, I'm not looking in his direction when it comes to myself, you know? So I was like, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't happen, then it's not the time, or it's just not meant to happen. And that's how I went through every day. And let me tell you, it is so frustrating because you still have it like in your subconscious. Like in your subconscious, you still have your desires and your wants, you know? So you have to like get used to the idea of not right now or not ever, you know? So that's what I was going through. And I think this happened more like middle school, high school, where I started experiencing that. I guess it would also be like impatientness. And then once I graduated from high school, I went into college and COVID happened. And so it was like, great, now we're all stuck at home. And there was nobody to like give word, like for God to use outside of my family, right? There was nobody else around for God to use to like give me word. So I had to like learn to listen to God, you know, for myself. Like listen to what he's telling me about me, not about other people, but about myself. And for me, that was like an awakening moment, because you don't realize that, yes, God's using you. Yes, you grew up in church. Like, yes, you are building your relationship with him. But at the same time, you don't realize when you start doing things the wrong way. And I think when COVID happened, it was just like a moment for God to work with me, on me, and start like reshaping me.
I think essentially like being impatient, desperateness, like, and then like life altering moments can really impact you, and to the point where you could either say like God's plans are good or God's plans are awful, you know, in that moment, you know, how you see things. Because, and this could be an amazing topic for another episode, but essentially like people see death differently, you know? Like when people die, some people take it as like a traumatizing situation, and not saying like the way they died, you know, just the fact that this just person death. Died, you know, and they always connect death with sadness, depression, you know, all these things, you know, sorrow. But there's a beauty to it too, you know, that some people don't really see because they're accustomed to death always being connected to sorrow, sadness, and stuff like that. Sorrows, prayers.
Okay.
But when you have a relationship with God and you grow with it, you end up realizing that when a person dies, they go to a better place, you know? And so that leads to like, well, shouldn't we be happy that this person is no longer suffering, or that this person is no longer on this earth, because who wants to be here, you know? But everybody sees it differently, you know? Just like the situations that we live, everybody sees those situations differently. Some people could go into desperation. Some people could go into suicidal thoughts. Some people could experience joy. Some people could experience, I don't know, excitement. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like everybody has different experiences and emotions that they connect to a moment in their lives. But nonetheless, it's difficult sometimes to, people always connect like the hardest parts of their life to questioning God's plans for them. But when it comes to the greatest moments in their lives, they're always saying like, God is good, you know? And I think the part that's difficult is learning how to say God is good in the most difficult times of your life, you know, and saying God's plans are good for my life. You know, that's the hardest part, especially when you're really going through it. And it's something that we have to learn, you know. It doesn't come naturally or easily, you know what I mean? But yeah, I think it's something that everybody goes through. Like, we've gone through it in different points of our lives in different areas. Like, these are just little mentions that experiences that we had, but we've had multiple experiences. And just like the general public, like, you don't have to be a pastor's kid to question, are these the plans that God, truly the plans that God has for me? You know, but if you do it, there's nothing wrong with it. It's part of growing your relationship with Him. At least that's how I see it, you know? And that's why we wanted to discuss this one, because we felt like it was, man, I said, Karina, have you ever questioned God's plans for your life? Karina was like, yeah. And I was like, me too. Maybe we should talk about it, because it's more than likely that a lot of people have done it too.
Yeah.
And it's natural and it's a process, and we should discuss it, you know?
Yeah.
But that's why we wanted to discuss that today. So if you guys have ever questioned God's plans for your life, know that it's okay, and that hopefully, and we pray that it's a moment in your life where that God builds your relationship stronger. But yes. Do you have anything else you want to mention?
I felt like this went by really shortly.
Was it? I don't think so.
No? I thought it did. Also, it has been a while, guys. It's because we were sick, but we're better now.
Look at Tubby. I mean, look at
Karla!
Sorry. Look at Karina. You can tell she was sick.
You're the sick one. God.
Sickly. Anyways.
No. God.
Anyways, but thank you guys for connecting with us again. Make sure you share our episodes, and if you like it, go ahead and give it a thumbs up on Spotify, right?
No, on YouTube.
On Spotify, you can go ahead and rate us. And share it with your friends. And if you feel like other people should hear it, share it. But we really enjoy doing these episodes with you guys, and we hope to stay connected with you. Reach out to us if you guys need prayers, or if you guys want to share something with us. You can reach out to our socials
at True Confessions PK. Hold on. I was thinking the Gmail. At True Confessions PK on Instagram and TikTok, and at true.confessionspk@gmail.com. If you want to send us an email.
But we'll see you guys next time.
Also, the next episode is our last episode for this season. So, right, everybody cry.
And we'll be back next season.
Cry. Well.
But send us ideas if you have any ideas on what you want to hear. And we would be more than happy to look into that.
Okay.
Bye, guys.
Bye.